COVID office hours. And just so you know, this is after Labor Day, so you have to put your white shoes away and get out your mitts. This is New England, so bundle up, and we're going to get through this winter. And if we're a bunch of snowflakes, then it means a blizzard is coming, and we're the blizzard. So welcome, everybody. And as we are wont to do, we'll start with a moment of silence, especially remembering this 19th anniversary of 9/11. Also, all of our friends that we've lost to COVID, and just folks who are having a hard time. So join me in a moment of silence. Thanks, everybody. So we'll go to the agenda, which is our standard agenda with announcements, updates from our partners. We're happy to have Lou here from the Connecticut State Department of Education, talk about some next steps, and we'll get you on your way this wonderful Friday afternoon. So announcements. Just a reminder for folks that you get the slides, that these are live links. If you click on them, as Suzanne is showing you, it takes you directly to the place. And so there's guidelines on vaccinations, on infection control, et cetera, et cetera. New infographics on how to protect folks from COVID in shelters, in 3 different areas, during meals, in sleeping areas, and when to wear a mask, which I'm thinking is most of the time, but click on that link and you'll find out. HUD has been a great partner, and we'll hear from Atlanta Cable in a bit, but National HUD has been giving lots of good information to us and resources, and this one is around rent repayment plans, how to talk to tenants, agreements, scripts for how to explain it to folks. It's important for everyone to understand that while there is eviction moratorium, it doesn't mean that folks should not be paying their portion of their rent, because when the moratorium is over, the landlords have a legal right to evict. And we don't want to see this onslaught of folks into homelessness, because that would undo all the work that we're trying to do day in and day out. So having those conversations, which aren't going to be easy, right? Because folks may think that a dollar in hand is better than holding it on for when the rent comes due. But these are resources that HUD has made available to us. Again, click for the Priority Index. It's a tool to help us in our various CANs target resources where they're most likely to reduce homelessness. There's some estimates based on census tracts, et cetera, et cetera. Accounts for risk factors that are higher for Black, Indigenous, and Latinx renters. So again, we're always wanting to be fully conscious of the fact that everything that we do is done through a racial equity lens. And this helps the CANs and providers do that. So Expediated Process is now available for any amendments. Suzanne, is there anything more to say about that?
No, I think people should remember this, but if you need to amend your grants with HUD because of COVID-related spending that's different from your normal, there is an expedited process. Again, HUD really being super supportive during these times for both your 2018 and 2019 grants.
Great, thanks. Next slide. Where'd we go, Suzanne? You looked away and your fingers clicked, and now we're back to square one. So basically, the next slide is about the census.
Is it not showing, John? It's showing on my screen.
Oh, it is showing. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My bad. I was pulling up my version so that I could see what the next slide is. So this one is about the census. We want people to be counted. Bottom line is it translates into money for services, and homeless folks deserve to be counted in the census just like everybody else. A lot of links for how to make sure that they're counted. So without further ado, Steve DeLello is on the line. You want to tell us what's going on at the Department of Housing?
Sure. So lots of funding will be coming out probably in the next month or so. Thanks once again to our friends at HUD. So we completed our public comment or had our public hearing last week for ESG Tranche 2. So Mike Santoro is working on getting all that completed, wrapped up, signatures from the commissioner so we can send it over to HUD. And then when HUD approves, we will go forward with those contracts. So that will be additional funding for rapid rehousing. That will also be additional funding for some shelters, which we're still trying to determine how best to use that, which could potentially be for some cold weather funding, which I'll get into in a minute. Also, we will be providing funding for the eviction prevention program. So that has been developed in conjunction with the Coordinated Access Networks. Quinnipiac University will be providing some level of mediation. We're also working with some legal aid folks to create a comprehensive program for eviction prevention for those who are at most risk of entering into the homeless system, if not for that resource. So we're excited to get that going. Once again, hopefully October 1st or shortly thereafter, we will be putting that out. So like I said, there's a lot of COVID money going out there. In addition, DOH has executed its final COC new grants, so the new domestic violence grants and the new DOH rapid housing grant was executed this week, so we'll be working on getting those out there as well. So once again, there will be lots of money flowing out into the system over the next month to 2 months. So that is really excellent news to give you guys the tools you need to be able to assist the folks that you serve and get them into permanent housing throughout the state. So what DOH is working on as well is trying to determine what our status of shelter beds will be looking in the winter. Obviously, we have the hoteling effort, which continues to shrink on a month-to-month basis while we have low transmission rates. But we're trying to determine what the true capacity of our system is now with COVID. So we know that most year-round shelters have had to reduce capacity to be able to provide social distancing. And we're also very concerned about overflow shelters and what that is going to look like in the winter. A lot of the spaces that are used are just wide open rooms, so that may not be best. So we've worked with the cans to give us the numbers. We're very close to finding out what the true decrease in beds will be. So then once we have that in hand, we'll try to determine what our options to ensure that we have enough bed coverage, at least equivalent to what we had last year. So that may mean more spaces in terms of actual places for warming centers. So we'll be working with our partners to figure that out and try to fund as best as we can to get to the true number of beds that there were last year. So that can be quite a difficult task, but we're up for it. We continue to work to get funding reimbursed from FEMA for the hoteling effort. There is potential for us to actually purchase a few hotels throughout the state that will provide shelter options that will also, once again, help with overall capacity. So there are still a lot of moving parts out there and lots of stuff going on, but we're certainly moving in the direction of getting you, the providers, all the resources you need to once again assist the folks that you serve.
Any questions for Steve? Reminder that we have a chat box. We have reactions. Feel free to do that. I'll just jump in before we go to HUD and Alana to do a 1-second update for DEMIS. Their waivers are good through 10/31/2020, and the new DEMIS training catalog is out on their website. So if you're looking for training, go to the DEMIS website for those. And at least this current waiver is good through Halloween. And who knows when it will be extended after that, right? Okay, so now, Alana, what's up with HUD?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all. I'm happy to let Steve and all of you know that Mike Santoro did obtain the signatures necessary to submit ESG2 to HUD. It came through in IDIS this morning. So we are starting to review that, and if everything's in order, we should have grant agreements back to the state next week. I would anticipate early next week, again, if everything's in order. So that's well on its way and in process. So that's a big plus for all of you to get some badly needed funding out the door. As you may know, we issued a new ESG CARES Act notice that was issued on September 1st. If you need a copy of that, I'm happy to send it along. But it essentially codified the waivers that we gave back at the end of March, the waivers we gave in May, and it added some additional flexibilities. So a few things to point out. On an earlier call this week, someone had inquired whether or not renter's insurance could be an eligible landlord incentive. If you look at the landlord incentive portion of the notice, that's not specifically listed. So I've reached out to our headquarters team. Abby Miller, our desk officer, is away this week, so I'm hoping I'll get a response from someone else, but if not today, I'll hear from Abby next week and I can let everyone know about that. I would highlight for you all again, duplication of benefits. You know, please make sure that your policies and procedures are in shape to address that and that you have a process for looking at duplication of benefits, because our Office of Inspector General has received quite a bit amount of money to audit these programs. And I can tell you from our disaster relief experience, at least in Connecticut, duplication of benefits is an area they'll often choose to audit. Someone asked yesterday on a call about, you know, housing stability and having to have the monthly case management meeting. You all know that's been waived. So I think you'll see when you have a chance to look at the notice that not only are the earlier waivers and flexibilities in there, but we've gone a little bit beyond that as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has on that. We did have our regional administrator here last week. The city of New Haven is using some of their CDBG COVID funds to start up about $800,000 of funding to start up an eviction and mortgage protection program so that folks won't get evicted. They're putting some money into legal services as well. So we were happy to see that kick off in New Haven last week, and our regional administrator was very pleased by that. So, you know, if you have any programs or initiatives that you're starting off, you know, certainly let me know. If at all possible, he will definitely travel to Connecticut. He's been anxious to get here. We've been anxious to highlight all the great work everyone is doing. So, you know, certainly feel free to shoot me a note if you have anything like that coming up. So other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions for anyone.
Feel free to put them in the chat. Alana is accessible daily to us, for which we are grateful. So also feel free to reach out to her through email. Before we go to the CCEH updates, I just want to recognize Bo for his outfit. It looks like you have rabbit ears. Are you also wearing a full rabbit costume or just the sash? Or is it just what you always wear?
It's just a boa. I don't know.
Oh, a boa.
And bunny ears.
Boa and a bunny ears. Well,
From the kids' costume bin over here in the basement. So
I love it. So thanks for joining in the fun.
I do it for John Mers only. So,
I appreciate that.
and my son wants to say hi. Of course you can. Come here.
Absolutely.
You have to be quick though, okay?
Hi, buddy.
Hi.
Hi.
All
His
right.
name.
This is Owen.
Hi,
Hey, Owen.
Owen has less schoolwork than his 3rd grade sister, so he's done.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Yes, cats, children, and spouses are welcome to do pop-ups on your screen whenever they enter the room. So good modeling, Bo. Who is going to do the CCEH updates? I see both David and Linda. I see a lot of numbers on a lot of slides. And if Linda's is gonna talk, then she's got to put on her hat. At least for a moment, to give people the visual. Good job.
Thank you. This is my Wizard of Oz hat from the Scarecrow. So it's my attempt. It's not nearly as good as Bo or John, but you know what? It's a shot.
I love it.
David, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words before I jumped in.
No, dive right in, Linda. It's all you today. Thanks.
Okay. I don't want to bore people with too many numbers, but I know there has been some interest in having some sense of where we are with the COVID data. And so the next slide, I just want to show you, this is just a draft. This was actually, I created this Friday, September 2nd, so it's already dated. We actually have 24 positive COVID cases that have come through the system. But the point here of what I wanted to show you, and I'm going to fly through these, is really just to show you what we're thinking about in terms of tracking and share some of the challenges we have. And I know that David can speak to the effort to go on to understand, we know that test data is coming in slowly from the testing providers, and that's a challenge for the actual shelters. But we also want to make sure that everyone understands the importance of, once you get that data, to get it into the system as fast as possible, because we literally, there are times where I've gotten 2 weeks with no updates on HMIS COVID data. So it makes it harder for us to report. This is all so preliminary, and so we don't have enough data to really make any conclusions, but I'll share with you some of the thinking. We were always going to, the intent was always to compare ourselves to how are we doing as a system compared to the state of Connecticut. So we'll always have some sense of, again, based on the ct.gov data, how many cases, how many deaths, and how many tests were actually reported in an overall time frame. When I say prevalence, I'm really referring to a point prevalence in this case, because this is obviously constantly fluxing. We do not have the benefit of having daily updates for how many positive cases and how many cases were actually taken that day. So this is going to be more over time, a point prevalence. Stop me at any time. I'm going to fly through these just again to give you a taste of what we're looking at. Next slide, please. This is, again, I'm going to go through, we are looking at our data from several lenses, race and ethnicity is what you see on this slide, as well as age and gender. I'll come to those next. And always we want to give you some sense of how many people are in our system. This is not everybody. I have to verify when I say open enrollments, it's really open enrollments for the shelter population and who's in our system, and in the gray, and Hispanic, non-Hispanic Black, non-Hispanic White, as well as you can see in the blue bar, who's been tested. So this gives us some sense of the overall, how is the testing going? Again, I'm going to fly through these. This is really just to give you a taste. I thought that, I see the colors didn't come through. Sorry about that. They all should look like the ones on the right. So next time we'll send a PDF. But what I also want, I think it's important for the folks to see is that if you look at our race and ethnicity, and again, the various other demographics overall in our system compared to those who are tested, and then you see the third bar pie chart rather shows how many positive cases, you can see that overall, again, this is preliminary, that we are testing. There's no bias right now in terms of who's getting tested. The numbers are pretty equal across the demographics, but you can see that the positive cases, again, just initially, we don't have a lot of data here, are showing what we see nationwide, that the non-Hispanic Black population is certainly affected to a greater degree than perhaps the other races and ethnicities. Again, informational. Next slide is really going to talk about gender. Same thing. I won't go through these. You can see we have obviously more men in our system compared to women, and again, how many we've tested compared to those who are in the shelter system. And this is the same concept of showing pie charts again across the board from a gender perspective. So you can see again, male and female Overall in the system versus those who've been tested, pretty comparable. And then you can see that the positive cases, again, slightly more men so far have been testing positive than the women have. Age, same thing. Probably the one thing to note here is that you notice that in our system, clearly adults 25 to 49 make up the highest percentage of people currently in shelters, and as well as closely seconded by 50 to 60-year-olds. And you can see again, relatively speaking, the testing seems to be comparable. Oh, these didn't come through at all. My apologies again. PDF next time. But this is simply to show, and again, I can send these out if anyone's interested. But this is again, the same concept, but for age. And you can see that the adults 29 to 45 are testing, again, we're going equally across the board, but again, they're testing higher at a higher rate. The adults 25 to 49, that's the 59.1% that you see. Obviously, pie chart with all the same color gray is not as effective as all the colors, but again, this is what the initial data is showing us. We're not seeing any kids test positive, by the way. This is again, positive results now. So now we're looking at all the people who tested positive by those same demographics. Again, pretty self-explanatory for the next few slides. And by gender, as well as by age. And you can again see how those positives are truly in that bracket between 25 and 60. So that's really what I just wanted to share. Again, this is just an initial, no conclusions, nothing left. We want to stress though, and I know David is working diligently with a lot of folks across the state to really help, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, understand the importance of getting the data into the system in a timely fashion, as well as let us know if there are challenges with getting your test data back. We understand there are a lot of things people are doing right now, but this is, I want to also state, this is not just to show you descriptive statistics and say, hey, here's how we're doing and sit back. This data is going to become critical, especially as we move forward into the colder months with the flu and everyone's anticipating the next round of this. Being able to look at our data and see where and when the hotspots are happening and be able to take action in a very timely manner and saying, you know what, we're seeing that in the New Haven area, several hotels are coming back with a lot of positive tests that each shelter provider may not know that everyone else in their area is having the same thing. That's where this value of this data, one of the many values of getting this data in a timely fashion is going to come in. So again, nice to have these dashboards. We do plan to put this on our website as a dashboard, but in the interim moving forward, this is going to be critical to take the right action, whether it's from a decompression or whatever the actions are that need to be taken. This data is what we will be relying on. So thanks for your time. Any questions?
Any questions for Linda or David? Thanks, Linda, for sort of not only telling us the what, but the why, and that it's meant to be operational for what next. So great, thanks, appreciate it. So September is back to school month. We had the kids on the front slide, and so it's timely to have an update from the Connecticut State Department of Education with Lou Tallarita.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thumbs up on the volume. Everyone can hear me?
Yep.
Thumbs up. All right, good. Yes, good afternoon. Back to school is certainly underway. And I had to point my camera down or off because I can't see my full screen with the camera pointing at me. I got a laptop here and a full screen, so I apologize for that.
We have a picture of you on the next slide. So
I know. So like I know that's the good part of this whole thing. So welcome everyone. I hope everyone here that have students returning in person or virtually to the classroom have safely navigated that return. And this is certainly unprecedented and a new experience for all of us. So I hope it's starting off okay for everybody. So I'm Louis Tallarita. I'm with the State Department of education consultant with the agency, and my primary roles are as the Connecticut and McKinney-Vento State Coordinator, as well as managing a Family Resource Center program here in our state. So most of this presentation here today that I'm displaying was part of a group presentation that my colleagues and I at the department taped earlier in June, titled Connecting and Listening to Vulnerable Families During COVID-19. And that full version is available online on our website, and I'll share that link at the end of this presentation. Next slide. So we all know that families that move around frequently may not have a strong support system to which they could turn to in times of crisis, and that youth who are on their own may not have caring adults to call upon for advice or information on how to keep safe and stay healthy. And in education, when we consider highly mobile families, we recognize migrant workers and military families, immigrant families, as well as families experiencing domestic violence and unstable work and home situations. Now during COVID-19 pandemic, a family or youth's housing may be considered unstable due to work issues that have come about. For example, emergency and essential workers that enlist housing separation for their children or family safety. And health issues or concerns such as isolation, hospitalization, or other situations that prevent housing situations to remain the same as they were prior to COVID-19. Many families and youth may likely fall into homelessness as well due to the current economic stressors caused by this pandemic. And insecure housing and loss of housing always creates educational challenges for families and for students, but especially now during COVID-19. Next slide. So what educational rights and supports are available for students experiencing homelessness during COVID-19? Next slide. The federal McKinney-Vento Act requires all school districts to ensure access to public education for children and youth experiencing homelessness, including the choice of school options that are available, comparable services, and removing barriers that prevent their success in school. And this federal law does remain in full effect right now during COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. The act does include a broad definition of who is homeless and includes unaccompanied youth or youth not living with a parent or guardian. With students and families moving due to COVID-19, maintaining connections can certainly be difficult for schools. Next slide. So, as I mentioned, the McKinney-Vento Act is still fully in effect. The definition of homelessness, the McKinney-Vento liaisons, their duties, identification, school of origin principles, transportation requirements, immediate enrollment, all of these are still in full effect. And it's more important than ever that LEAs or school districts continue with identification efforts, since many new families and youth may fall into homelessness due to the economic crisis caused by this pandemic. And also these families are certainly emerging with many urgent needs. So schools must enroll McKinney-Vento students immediately, even during this pandemic. Enrollment means attending classes and participating fully in school activities. So that means that students experiencing homelessness need to be enrolled immediately so they can participate in all of the activities that schools are offering right now. That includes school meals, virtual classes, school social work services, outreach, etc. Next slide, please. However, it is important to consider that while the law is still in effect, the way in which it's implemented may change, of course. For example, immediate enrollment in the current state-declared 14-day quarantine requirement for individuals arriving from certain states is in effect, and that class attendance may be restricted while the student fulfills the quarantine, opting instead to provide virtual learning during that period of time. Next slide. In June, the State Department of Education provided school districts with recommendations for registration during COVID-19. And these recommendations reminded them to accommodate housing circumstances that warrant the protection of the federal McKinney-Vento Act. Next slide. So what can we do to stay connected with families and unaccompanied youth experiencing homelessness during COVID-19? Next slide. Well, in creating a full and equitable partnership with families and aligning with the Connecticut Framework for Family Engagement, we ask school districts to develop both sharing and listening strategies to connect and outreach with families. As part of these sharing strategies to stay connected with families and youth, we recommended to school districts to make sure that the use of all of the available communications are in play, right? There's lots of ways that districts can communicate with families and with youth, to reach out to emergency contacts, other students, as well as in the housing and homeless service partners for updated information on where youth may be when they've when they've subsequently maybe lost track of them during this pandemic. Making sure that districts' communications on websites and social media share information on the programs and services that are available, and offering home learning tips. And as always, as part of the statute, posting flyers, brochures, and posters, so where families and youth can get access to that information regarding their educational rights and services. That can include grocery stores, pharmacies, and other essential services locations. Next slide. And listening strategies, where stay connected with families. The use of food and learning packet distributions as opportunities to inquire about other basic needs that students may have, as far as their learning goes. Encouraging regular two-way conversations with parents and youth through mobile technology, and even if necessary, providing prepaid cell phones, tablets, and laptops. Developing regular check-ins with families and also with youth, including virtual home visits that inquire on supports needed to stay safe, healthy, and engaged in school, and urging families and students to certainly stay in touch and share their progress and their challenges in building learning skills. Next slide. So asking the question about what resources are available to assist in these efforts. Well, next slide. Districts and certainly school districts have access to Title I Part A funds. These funds include set-asides for homeless children and youth. So homeless children and youth are categorically eligible for services under Title I, and that the use of these funds is certainly allowable and should be considered. Districts also that have been awarded McKinney-Vento funds may consider reviewing and revising these funds for COVID-19 related expenses. The Supplemental CARES Act, the federal funds, are now available. Applications generally have been approved in districts, and funding can be targeted to meet the needs of children and youth experiencing homelessness. And also checking with other local education agencies, school district, and early childhood program funds can certainly be used to meet the unique needs of preschool age children or for youth that may be living on their own. And always encouraging that the community at large can assist in terms of philanthropic and other local supporters to help support the needs that are arising as a result of COVID-19 and students. The COVID-19 crisis requires us all to think creatively about how to carry out responsibilities to help students experiencing homelessness. There are additional resources, next slide, available at our State Department of Education website, including all of the guidance that's been issued for the 2021 school year, all the addendums and FAQs to school districts and to families, resources for families, resources for educators during this time, and all of the school districts' 2020 reopening plans are all available on this website. Next slide. There's also good information available from the U.S. Department of Education, online resources, information about the CARES Act emergency relief, remote learning strategies, learning at home, waivers and flexibilities that have been extended during this period of time, and other program information, FAQs, and the responses that are coming in from states and school districts around the country. And the next slide. There's also some other good resources out there, like the National Center for Homeless Education that's preparing information, fact sheets, etc. for use. The Schoolhouse Connection, another great resource out there on a national level that are preparing a lot of good information for schools and for communities to work with. And then there's the National Association for the Education of Homeless Children and Youth. All these links, of course, are live for people to access. I think that's it. So thank you all. And I don't know if anyone had, this is my contact information, as well as the information regarding Connecticut Local Education Agency Homeless Liaisons, which is currently in the process of being updated for this next school year. If you have any challenges in navigating that, contact me directly. We've got about 80% of the updates. We started about a week ago in updating that information regarding local liaisons and school districts. And so far, we're right about 80% of all of the districts who have responded either with confirming the information or updating information for the new school year.
Thanks, Lou. That was great information, chock full, and folks will have access to these slides, to the links, and more importantly, to your phone number. So the chat room is awfully quiet today.
Let me say one thing, the phone number, I'm out of the office, been out of the office since March, of course, we're not working in the office. So the phone number unfortunately doesn't transfer to me. But so the best way to reach me is by email. I'm pretty responsive, and I do check the phone mail, but I can't say that I'm as good as I should be in doing that, checking that phone messages for me. But I do try and do it at least once a week. But the best way to communicate is through email right now for me, and we can set up a time to talk as well. That's not a problem.
Great, thanks a lot. So if there are no other questions, we'll go to the next slide after this one. So updates, I think I jumped the gun a little bit talking about the CDC eviction moratorium, but Suzanne, do you want to sort of do a high level of this?
Sure, very high level, but there's a lot of detail on this slide. But the CDC released a temporary halt in evictions for the purposes of not preventing homelessness, but preventing the spread of COVID-19 so that people don't have to go to shelters or be otherwise doubling and tripling up to deal with their housing crisis. So it halts evictions through 12/31 of this year for non-payment of rent and related penalties. It does not halt evictions for other reasons like nuisance behaviors, and it covers a lot of people, and certainly all of, based on the income requirement, covers all of the people we're serving in this program. And we have links. Landlords can be criminally prosecuted for violating this order and evicting people. I don't know how that's going to work, but it really is a law that means it. And so what we have are a couple of links here. This is to the actual moratorium, and then this is to the declaration, which is the really important document that I'm going to talk about, is because in order to be covered under this eviction moratorium, individual tenants and everyone who's living with them in that unit must to provide a declaration to the landlord stating that they basically have attempted to receive all assistance they can from any rapid rehousing or any emergency resources, that they're not going to make more than $99,000 in 2020, which I think is most of our folks, and they cannot pay their rent because they've lost income during COVID, and that they're making an attempt to make payments. And that this would, if they were evicted, they would become homeless or doubled up in some way. So I just want to flip back because I have an extra second here to say this link is that declaration form. It's a simple 2-page form. If any of the tenants you're working with are falling behind on their rent and don't have resources to pay it, you want to make sure that they file this form for themselves and everyone in their household so that they will be protected under this moratorium. There are questions out there about what if they file it at the point when the landlord is pursuing eviction, et cetera, et cetera. As we all know, it's really important in eviction prevention to be on top of it when people are falling behind. So if we have that going on with any of the folks we're working with, we want to make sure that they get this declaration in long before anybody's going to court. So that's the high level thing. You can read all the details because we also linked you to the language from the CDC.
Thanks, Suzanne. Any questions? Show of hands, how many folks are actually having these conversations with their clients to make sure that they're not just taking rent holidays, that they fully understand it? Thank you, Susie. Glad to see that. Again, as I said at the beginning, it's really important for us to be the folks who get the correct message across to them, because they may be hearing just the headlines that say you don't have to pay rent, and that's not exactly true. So if there's anything that you need from us or any more resources, put in the chat at the end of our slides. We have all of our emails. So this is one of those things that I think we really want to pay attention to. Okay, so next steps and resources. We've got our steering committee next Friday, a little earlier. It's 11 to 12, and the link's here. So one of the things we will be doing is hearing from the candidates who have submitted a application to be the 4th co-chair in our efforts to be racial and ethnic inclusive with equity. So they will present, and then we'll have a voting process that happens outside of the meeting. So we'll tell you all about that on Friday. And then we're back together on the 2nd of October. And if there's topics that you want us to cover that you think are timely, let us know. We'll put those into the queue for this or future months. I don't remember if we have a particular topic lined up for October 2nd.
The October 2nd is a more in-depth BOS update. We alternate between a presentation on something of substance. I think that's our topic. But we'll let folks know if there is going to be a special item.
Great. Thanks. Next slide. Everything we do is recorded, and all of the questions and all of our answers we're archiving. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you say, oh, what did they say when I asked that question 4 months ago? You can click on this link, and all of that information is available to you. Here's our general Gmail mail address, but at the last slide, we've got all of the individual email addresses. And then those 2 slides that Suzanne just briefed through quickly are the resources that our statewide and national partners make available to us 24/7. Are there any other questions? Oh, yeah, I know you do, Sylvia. You always wake up in the middle of the night and you think, what did we say about that? What did Linda, what was that slide about? So we should just form like a Facebook support group for those of us who wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sure the room would be jam-packed.
I think we should have a Zoom. You're right.
Yes. Yeah.
Pajama party.
Zoom for the middle of the night. I just want to say it is a very quiet chat today. No one asked about the NOFA. I know you're missing it.
No news is no news.
Exactly.
So
that's the news.
Has that pretty much been decided that there is no NOFA this year?
That's what the word has been, but we have not. We thought we were going to get some confirmation last month and forgot to ask Alana. I don't think she's still. Oh, she's there.
No, I'm here. Last I heard from Abby Miller, our desk officer, was no update on the NOFA. That was a couple of weeks ago now, but I did check in with her, and unfortunately, we don't have any news yet.
No, that's good news. That may mean that we have a year off, and maybe HUD will recognize that this doesn't have to be done annually. So we're learning lots of things through COVID, like we don't need wet signatures, and things can be done through electronic transmission. So who knows what good things will come out of this bad time. So I am a glass half full kind of guy. And with that, I am going to be so generous and give you 13 minutes of your life back. So enjoy this Friday, and thanks for joining us, everyone. Be kind to yourself and to those you meet. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.